from the city that never sleeps. 17 miles from Madison Square Garden, New York City. It's America at Night with Rich Valdez, America's favorite late-night talk program, featuring interesting guests from around the world and calls from across America. And now, here is your host, Rich Valdez.
Hi there, good evening, and what's up, America? I am Rich Valdez, Valdez with an S, at Rich Valdez on all of the social media. And man, plenty going on tonight. Here's just some of the stuff that I'm looking at, and there's a lot more. My producers gave me a really big list of things that are going on. But one of the things that, the biggest story I think today is the Sinaloa cartel, right? Sinaloa cartel is being prosecuted. 17 members of the Sinaloa cartel, including El Chapo Guzman's son, have been charged by the Department of Justice with narco-terrorism. So it's already working. That's the big story there. Then you got, let's see, Iran. Iran saying they want a deal. Who knew? And again, is this them succumbing to the total maximum pressure campaign? No. I think, is it them being weakened by that campaign? Absolutely. Do I trust them? Never. But I think they are willing to make a deal that they'll probably renege on, but they'll be cautious to renege on it, knowing how much support Trump is getting in the region and how serious he is about taking out their facility. I think they've realized now there aren't many options. Either you play ball or we're going to blow up your nuclear facility. What are you going to do? And former FBI director James Comey tweeting out today 8647, and at least on Twitter, you wouldn't even know what Trump is doing because that's all people are talking about. I think he took a page out of Trump's playbook there, putting something incredibly stupid, some cryptic message, as if he wants to 187 or 86 the president. And, of course, there's a lot of outrage, but you would think that, Trump didn't just do all the things he did in the last 115 days. Unbelievable. Anyway, those are the things we're covering tonight, and I want to start with Iran. You've got the Iranian, I don't know his name or his job, but he's like the number 2 guy authorized to talk about the nuclear deals that are going on. And he says, we are ready to talk. We are ready to make a deal. Count Delacula, do we have that one lined up? Let's go for it.
President Trump today seemed confident he'll reach a nuclear deal with Iran.
And I have a feeling it's going to work out.
After warning, there's a time window for Iran that's closing.
But if Iran's leadership rejects this olive branch and continues to attack their neighbors, then we will have no choice but to inflict massive maximum pressure.
Iranians appear to overwhelmingly want a deal. The country's economy is suffering, and many tell us they want to end their international isolation. Today, we sat down with Ali Shamkhani, the military, political, and nuclear advisor to Iran's supreme leader. He said Iran also wants a deal.
Yes, we are ready.
Shamkhani is one of the few people in Iran authorized to speak about the sensitive negotiations.
We can definitely have better relations with the U.S.
Shamkhani said that Iran is willing to commit to never having a nuclear weapon, to getting rid of its stockpiles of highly enriched uranium, to only enriching to a level needed for civilian use, and to allow inspectors in to oversee it all, in exchange for lifting all sanctions immediately. He said Iran would accept that deal tonight.
Now, of course, Iran would accept that deal because those are terms that I think would not fly, right? Although President Trump just lifted all the sanctions on Syria and saying, hey, look, here's your chance. I don't know that that's going to be the option for Iran. I think I would bet a whole bunch of money if I was a betting man. I would say that that's not the case, that they're going to remain somehow with some sort of, it's going to do something. I mean, he's going to do something and it's going to be a deal, but I don't know that you give them everything they want. only because they've really never proven themselves to be the good guys, right? All they do is fund all these proxy groups to go and throw rocks when they're not, when you're not looking. So I'd be cautious to do that. And of course, President Trump is, a few steps ahead of them on this stuff. So I think that it's going to be a deal that's fair. It's going to make a lot of sense for us, a lot of sense for the rest of the world, and it's going to be fair for Iran. They're going to get something out of the deal. I think a deal that says stop building your nuclear enrichment facility and stop enriching uranium, or we're just going to blow you up. We're going to blow up your facility. I don't think there's a deal there, right? That's just a threat, and one that you'd have to comply with. So I think there's going to be more to it than that. And looks like they're making some progress. So kudos to everybody involved on that front. Now, a couple other things I want to get to. What's the other thing I want to do here? Man, I had it all lined up, and the Iran thing threw me off. Oh, man, the cartel stuff. I'm going to get into the cartel stuff in a little bit because that's exciting. We'll talk about that a little bit more maybe in the next hour. But the cartels have never been charged before, right? They haven't faced this type of narco-terrorism charge. And I think this is a big deal. The United States attorney from California, he had a stern message for them when he announced this stuff yesterday, saying, look, you are now the hunted. I want you to check this one out.
Let me be direct. To the leaders of the Sinaloa cartel, you are no longer the hunters. You are the hunted. You will be betrayed by your friends. You will be hounded by your enemies, and you will ultimately find yourself and your fates here in a courtroom in the Southern District of California. An indictment which our office unsealed today is the first in the nation to charge multiple alleged leaders of the Sinaloa cartel with narco-terrorism and material support of terrorism charges in connection with trafficking massive amounts of fentanyl, cocaine, methamphetamine, and heroin. The indictment was made possible by President Trump's Executive Order 14157, which designated the Sinaloa cartel as a foreign terrorist organization, and the Secretary of State's subsequent designation of the same on February 20th, 2025.
So that, again, is the United States Attorney Adam Gordon for the Southern District of California. And this is a big deal, right? Again, you've got El Chapo's son being locked up, one of the 17 that were arrested. They actually turned themselves in. And this is a very big deal. Big deal. This hasn't happened before. And I say it's a big deal because, again, I think they turned themselves in on the 9th, about a week ago. And from there's been, these charges brought, in additional the seizure that happened on the 6th with the 3 million fentanyl pills. All this stuff is adding up to where we are today, where, now they're bringing these charges, these terrorist charges. Now, why is this a big deal? It's a big deal because it's never happened in America, but it's an even bigger deal that this is breaking the internet on the Spanish news feeds. If you look at the news in Mexico or any of the neighboring Latin American countries that cover Mexico, that's all they're talking about. How the first ever narco-terrorist charges were brought against El Chapo's son and 17 members of Sinaloa. I mean, they're interviewing people on the street. I found so many good audio clips, but they were all in Spanish, and, they lose all their luster if you have to translate them. But they were of people, and they're talking to people in Sinaloa in Mexico, that are, they're saying, what do you think about this? And these people are saying, this is not who we are as a people. They finally feel brave enough to kind of speak out. And, about a week ago, there was a CNN piece where they interviewed one of the lieutenants in this cartel. And he basically said, and I'll play the clip for you a little bit later, but he basically said, when CNN tried to set up the gotcha question, like, what do you think about President Trump? Almost as if they were advocating for the cartels. which is why I keep saying I feel like Democrats and the left within the media, the left within our government, the left within the higher education establishment, the left overall, they are absolutely enamored and in love with every last terrorist they can find. It's like what they do now. But she sets up the question saying, you know, Donald Trump has labeled you guys a foreign terrorist organization. How do you feel about that? How do you feel about Donald Trump? And his response, he turns to her and he says, I respect him. He's a president. He's looking out for his people. How about that? Another quick thing I wanted to get into before we take a quick pause. I was sharing some of the images, some of the video from President Trump's arrival in Qatar yesterday on social media. And, you know, I usually get some responses from people, you know, saying they like it, they don't like it, whatever. And there were some people saying that, you know, it was absolutely ridiculous, the level of fanfare that Trump was getting in Qatar. And all I could think to myself was, I wish the Democrats loved America the way the Qataris love America. I mean, in Dubai, they lit up their tallest building. It's the tallest building in the world. They lit up the tallest building in the world in the colors of the American flag. They received President Trump with a dog and pony show, literally ponies, beautiful, these beautiful horses. And all these, you know, they look like knights. You know, I'm going to call them Arabian Nights. And it was just such a just fascinating reception. You know, there were young women that lined the wall. I don't know, I'd say a dozen or so, maybe 24 on each side of the hallway in the palace. And they had, their hair was so long, I'd say it was about down to their knees. Long jet black hair. Maybe they were wearing wigs. I don't know. But I just thought it was interesting because you don't normally see women's hair in the Middle East. But part of the greeting for President Trump was that these women just stood against the wall and kind of dancing and waving their hair as part of the greeting. This long, very beautiful hair. And I just thought, wow, that's got a, I don't know the meaning or the tradition behind that. But I did think it was quite impressive that was, you know, something they hide all the time, and they were putting it on display. Clearly, this was a guest of honor, and I'd never seen this before. So I guess, you know, it's taken me by surprise. It's definitely my ignorance, my own naivete of this. But fascinating, the way they treated President Trump. You had all the women in the back that were covered up on their tippy toes with their cell phones high up in the air as President Trump came out to God bless the USA. And I just thought this was remarkable, right? It looked like Trump attending CPAC or Trump attending one of the Trump rallies. And he was in Qatar. Those people can't vote for him. And from the looks of things, all they did was say, hey, the president came here. They're the ones that are ponying up trillions of dollars in order to do business with us, to have Boeings and to do this and to do that. So again, it just fascinating to me the amount of respect, the amount of appreciation they had for the United States, in particular for Trump. And I know that him and the Amir are old friends because they alluded to that in their conversation. But wow, it was really, really quite endearing. I mean, we don't receive the president of the United States like that in America, let alone, you know, seeing that kind of reception in another country. So anyway, kudos to that. That was pretty cool to watch. And some people were saying that it was just reminiscent of a clown show and appropriate for a clown. And that made me laugh. I thought that was funny. But at the same time, I'm thinking we could say things like that, right, that detract from Trump. But ultimately, inflation is down. The cartels are being charged and are in jail right now. 17 members, including El Chapo's son, including El Chapo, on narco-terrorism charges. Never happened before. That's a real thing. That's taken all of Latin America by storm. We're seeing things that have never happened before. They're calling it a reset. They're calling it a realignment. I'm calling it what Trump calls it, the golden age of America. I'll be right back.
This is America at Night. Night with Rich Valdez.
I want to listen to you, Rich, all the time.
America at Night with Rich Valdez.
I would think we'd want the system to move as quickly as possible to reach the merits of the issue and maybe have this court decide whether or not the government is entitled to do this under the law. Wouldn't having universal injunctions actually facilitate that? It seems to me that when the government is completely enjoined from doing the thing it wants to do, it moves quickly to appeal that, to get it to the Supreme Court, and that's actually what we would want. What I worry about is similar to what Justice Kagan points out, is that if the government is saying no lower court can completely enjoin it, it actually means that the government just keeps on doing the purportedly unlawful thing, and it delays the ability for this court to reach the underlying issue.
That's just part of the oral arguments that went down at the Supreme Court of the United States today. You were listening to Associate Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson in a discussion with Solicitor General John Sauer over birthright citizenship. Should people that are born in the United States automatically become citizens of the United States? If you're on vacation and you have a baby, if you are here on a work visa and get somebody knocked up, pardon my vernacular there, but all sorts of situations like this happen. And does this mean that everybody's automatically American? I believe that the initial intent and spirit of this was not for that to be the case, but we've had that discussion in the past, and I want to get reaction to what's going on today. But with limited time on the clock, I want to introduce our guest and set this up to come back and knock it out of the park. Our guest, she's a faithful regular here, Sarah Parshall Perry. She's Vice President and Legal Fellow at Parents Defending Education. Sarah Parshall Perry, welcome back.
Rich, thanks so much for having me.
No, thank you, and thanks for being flexible on your time. I want to set this up for you to be able to, marvel us with your, your understanding of this and your ability to make all of us understand it, because it's pretty complex stuff, in my opinion. And I guess the crux of the matter here is this issue of universal injunctions is what, partially what they've been debating today. So I guess when we come back, I'd like you to walk us through some of that, as well as some of what the other justices were saying, and give us your insight overall, if that's okay.
Yeah, absolutely. This was, as you rightly pointed out, a case, yes, about birthright citizenship, but more specifically about the very discrete procedural issue going to universal injunctions. And that's really what's at issue.
Well, that's what we're going to discuss right now. Coming back, folks, we're coming right back with Sarah Parshall Perry. She is a brilliant legal mind, an outstanding patriot, and Vice President and Legal Fellow at Parents Defending Education. She's with us for a little longer, and she's going to explain it all to us when we return. Don't go anywhere. It's Rich Valdez coming right back with Sarah Parshall Perry.
Look at Rich Valdez. He's now a radio host, and he's a great radio host.
America at Night with Rich Valdez.
General, when were the first universal injunctions used?
We believe that the best reading of that is what you said in Trump against Hawaii, which is that Wirtz in 1963 was really the first universal injunction. There's a dispute about Perkins against Lucan's Oil going back to 1940. And of course, we point to the court's opinion that reversed that universal injunction issued by the D.C. Circuit and said it's profoundly wrong. Now, if you look at the cases that the either party cite, you see a common theme. The cases that we cite, like National Treasury's Employment Union, Perkins against Lucan's Oil, Frothingham in Massachusetts against Mellon, going back to Scott against Donald, and all of those are cases where the court considered and addressed the sort of universal, in that case, statewide issue of provision of injunctive relief. So when the court has considered and addressed this, it has consistently said you have to limit the remedy to the plaintiffs who are appearing in court and complaining of that remedy.
So we survived until the 1960s without universal injunctions.
That's exactly correct. And in fact, those were very limited, very rare, even in the 1960s. It really exploded in 2007 in our cert petition in Summers against Earth Island Institute. We pointed out that the Ninth Circuit had started doing this in a whole bunch of cases involving environmental claims.
And of course, neither of these gentlemen need introduction, but just to make sure we're on the same page, that is United States Associate Justice Clarence Thomas and Solicitor General John Sauer discussing the need and the introduction of universal injunctions. Now, another person that doesn't need an introduction, but we'll give her one anyway, is Sarah Parshall Perry. She was the senior counsel at the United States Department of Education Office of Civil Rights. She's now vice president and legal fellow at Parents Defending Education. Sarah Parshall Perry, welcome back. What are these guys talking about?
Yeah, so this is really interesting. You know, there was no really clear winner or loser in what I heard from oral arguments today, but it was very clear that Justice Thomas and the Chief Justice, in addition to Justice Samuel Alito, are, I think, inclined to rule for the Trump administration here. But again, we're going to the question of universal injunctions. And what Sonia Sotomayor and Justice Jackson said was that at some point we're going to have to rule on the merits. But how is it going to come to us if every single federal court has ruled against you? Now, of course, this is a consolidation of three separate cases, and in all three of those cases from three different states, those federal judges issued nationwide injunctions saying the rule is patently unconstitutional on its face. We are going to prevent its enforcement against anyone in the country. And what the Trump administration has argued is, listen, you've indicated to us that you are definitely sort of looking with a critical view toward universal injunctions. And the fact that Justice Thomas said that was one of the lines that stood out to me. In other words, we don't really need universal injunctions because it is our force of habit to only try cases and controversies in front of us. And that means parties who are actually injured, actually impacted, and in front of the court to be rightly redressed in their grievances. So Roberts, Alito, I think Thomas all seemed inclined to find for the Trump administration on this, but it really goes to the question of, can the Supreme Court find an alternative theory of relief for all of these individuals? In other words, every individual in the country to whom this particular executive order applies, which, by the way, Rich, and you sort of hinted at this, this is the Trump administration, their consistency in the view of 1900s jurisprudence and the 14th Amendment's drafting itself is very clear to me. It's clear to be historically supported. They are not taking a perspective on this that is off the wall or is unconstitutional, but this goes to the very discrete question. And so what they've argued is, listen, get rid of universal injunctions. One single judge does not have the authority to bind everyone in the country, even parties to which are not present in the lawsuit. And instead, you could certify what's called a class action under the federal rules of civil procedure. So John Sauer, the SG, was arguing, take this alternative theory. And Justice Jackson, Sotomayor, and Kagan especially, who was highly critical and went on a bit of a diatribe about, you've lost every single time. We will have to get to the merits, and you've only handed us a procedural issue. We can't possibly get to that point if all of the judges keep ruling against you. So the alternative theory of class action certification is what the administration is advancing. I think it's solidly based in law, but there were no real clear winners and losers.
Sarah Parshall Perry, let's play this out. So if the legal strategy that the Solicitor General is pursuing is viable and they're able to get certified for class action, how does that play out moving forward? I heard another exchange, and I wish I could play it for the audience and for you, of Chief Justice Roberts and Solicitor General Sauer going at it about the particular point of how do you make it work? Same question I'm asking is, what does it look like moving forward? And the answer wasn't very clear as to, I think the answer the Solicitor General gave was just like any other kid that's born in the United States who's not going to be a citizen, we would handle it that way, the way we currently handle it, just it wouldn't be assumed. And that made sense to me, although simplistic, it made a lot of sense. How would that work with this class action moving forward and the executive order?
So that's a great question. Let's say that they say that this is an opportunity. You can certify a class. That's how these individual plaintiffs can get relief. They buy the government's theory. They get kicked back down to the trial court. The trial court ruling is overturned, and now you're back to the drawing board. You might have an opportunity to amend the complaint that you've already filed. I'm talking about the plaintiff's bar here representing the illegal immigrants. Or if you're sort of a savvy ACLU attorney, you find another favorable district court in which you file a new lawsuit with an entire class of individuals, perhaps hundreds, perhaps thousands. It has to be a class of specific size for the Supreme Court to be able to adjudicate relief for all of them meaningfully. But sometimes in these class action lawsuits, Rich, as you know, we're seeing thousands of individuals who are impacted. That is not beyond the pale. So individuals here who are directly impacted by this executive order have an opportunity to go back to the drawing board in another federal court and get relief because they're certified as a portion of a class. I don't think that's beyond the pale. I think the three conservative justices certainly indicate that that was an option. As Justice Clarence Thomas said, listen, we may do without these universal injunctions until the 1960s. This is a recent iteration, and even Justice Neil Gorsuch himself, in some dicta for related opinions that have been issued in the last two terms, has said that they are unconstitutional, and at some point the Supreme Court will have to consider them. That's exactly what they did today.
Outstanding analysis, Sarah Parshall Perry. And what else should we be apprised of? I guess, what else are you following in the legal world?
Well, we've actually seen quite a bit of high-profile litigation. In fact, every time I think that they weren't going to take another hot-button issue, they took another hot-button issue. We've already heard oral arguments in the state Medicaid challenge to funding of abortion in the state of South Carolina. We've seen Corn and the First Amendment in National Free Speech Coalition versus Pacton, whether or not you have a right as a state to require porn distributors to require age verification so that you could protect minors. Pretty commonsensical issue, but it goes to state power, it goes to the free speech doctrine of the First Amendment, and it goes to tech privacy. So big issues there. I'm most fascinated by the oral arguments in Mahmoud versus Taylor, which we just heard about 2.5 weeks ago. That is, of course, the case being brought by a coalition of religious parents who all sued Montgomery County Public Schools because their 5-, 6-, and 7-year-olds were inculcated, were instructed, were given curricular inclusions on LGBTQIA themes. In fact, one of the books that was designed to, quote, increase phonetic capability, it was a picture book, and it was called Pride Puppy. And they were asked to identify things like the trans flag, someone wearing leather, and an individual they believed was non-binary.
This is, you said 5-, 6-, and 7-year-olds?
5-, 6-, and 7-year-olds in Montgomery County Public Schools. They are Rich, a traditional bad actor, one of the most liberal school districts in the country, sort of ground zero. They and Fairfax County Public Schools in Virginia are both sort of ground zero for gender identity in public schools. Those parents, and they were Muslim, they were Orthodox, they were Catholic, they were Pentecostal, they were Jewish, all came to the Supreme Court, and they said the same thing. You teaching this information to our children without our opportunity to opt out is a violation of our right to direct the religious upbringing of our children. They're hearing one thing at home. They're hearing something completely different when they go to school. And after all, what is a child's next obvious authority figure but their teacher? So these are children who are being told that men and women are distinct. They are immutably biologically separate from one another. And then at 5, they're being told to identify drag queens, pride parades, and transgender flags. That's the best way I know, not only to confuse a young child, but when they eliminated the opt-out right, to show their hand and indicate, listen, it really is about pushing gender identity. In fact, they had an opt-out right, and Rich, they eliminated it without public notice or comments from the parents who were affected. They were asked why by the justices, specifically Justice Alito, and they said, well, it became unfeasible because there were so many opt-outs. And all they had to say, and I have to tell you, even Justice Elena Kagan said, I think even non-religious parents are going to have objections to this material based on its inappropriateness for children of a certain age. So she may actually be the swing vote in this case. It is going to be a straightforward application, I think, of a case from the 70s called Wisconsin versus Yoder. And that was a case in which the Supreme Court struck down a state law requiring mandatory education past the age of 8th grade. And the Amish said, it is part of our faith tradition that our 8th grade young men come home, they conclude their education, and then they help us build our agrarian communities and worship in the way that we want to worship. And the Supreme Court said, you know what, you're right. It is your fundamental right to direct the religious education and upbringing of your children. And that goes in a public school context as much as a private school context, as much as at home. I think this is going to be a slam dunk for the parents. I'm very hopeful, but based on the fact it wasn't heard until April 22nd or so, we are probably not going to see this until the end of the term. The last one, and Rich, you and I know have talked about this, the big gender medicine case, and I'm using medicine in air quotes here, the state-affirming medical ban on so-called gender-affirming care for minors under the age of 19. Coming out of the state of Tennessee, this was the last case to be argued in December. So that means from the December sitting, and now we are seeing the last of the December opinions roll out. I would not be surprised if we actually get an answer on whether or not those state bans are constitutional within the next few weeks.
Wow. That's a lot to lay on us, Sarah Parshall Perry. Folks, make sure you follow her at Sarah P. Perry on X. And Sarah, let everybody know where to, to check in with all the work you're doing, your website.
Definitely check us out at defendinged.org, and we are filing multiple federal civil rights complaints. We are about to launch a national civil rights lawsuit. I can't wait to share that with you in the next few weeks. And we are doing really, really heavy lifting. We want education to be value neutral and high quality for every child in America, no matter who they are.
Amen to that. Sarah Parshall Perry. Make sure you check her out, defendinged.org. Sarah P. Perry on X. You are a gentlewoman, a scholar, and a patriot. Godspeed to you, and thank you so much for giving us the update.
Thanks again, Rich.
You bet. Thank you. And amigos, we come right back. Your calls and more. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S. Now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
All right, amigos, welcome back. It's Rich Valdez. Our telephone number is 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ. We're live, we're national. It's 50 minutes past the hour, and I want to bring to your attention, we just had a conversation, all right, about a bunch of Supreme Court cases ranging from birthright citizenship to religious education to this last one, were about pornography and pornography being protected under free speech and whatnot. And these are all before the court. And I saw a clip of a dad from Minneapolis. His name is Levi Chapman. And he goes to a school board meeting and he explains what his son saw in school. Now, to my surprise and your surprise, it was not just like the crazy things you read about in these books that are out there that, they say are banning, don't say gay and all that other stuff. The kid, most kids nowadays, they give you a tablet or a laptop or a Chromebook or, some sort of electronic device for you to use at your schoolwork. And the boy had forgotten his at home. So the teacher was loaning him one. I don't think it was an extra one. I think the teacher was giving him his own. And to the surprise of everybody, the boy saw images of naked men on this device. And the dad, took exception to this. And, the son told the dad what he'd seen. And all that being said, the dad complained and got no response. So what do you think he did, like any good dad would do? He showed up at the school board meeting to talk about it during the public comment section and made his public comments. And when we come back, you're going to hear exactly what he said. So keep it locked right here. I'm Rich Valdez.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
Mr. Rector, I had emailed you. I had emailed the principal, the assistant principal, and the school social worker. My son, 2 weeks ago, was exposed to a group of, let's say, gay men having sex on the iPad. And how my son came about it was he forgot his laptop at home, and your teacher lent my son his personal iPad. Well, when my son was doing a project with some of the other kids in the classroom, all of a sudden they closed out a tab. There was a bunch of naked men sitting right there in front of my son. And then all the other kids that had seen this, they were shocked. But what's crazy is that I haven't heard nothing since. I didn't get a response from our superintendent. I had a meeting with your guys' assistant.
I got more of that. There's like 4 more clips of that. This is such a eye-opening conversation from this dad, Levi Chapman, in Minneapolis, that none of us should have to go through, right? And I feel badly that he went through it, but I'm glad that he's speaking up about it because people need to know what's going on. That's not cool, right? That's not cool in any way. There's no defense of this. Kids should not be going through this. And I'm going to say this now, and if I haven't said it in a while, take your kids out of public school. Put them in private school. Homeschool them yourself if you can. A lot of people are working from home now. Your kids will be better off. I'm so thankful to God I don't have to raise little kids right now. If I did, they'd be in private school for sure. All right, amigos, more to come straight ahead. Depending on what part of the country you're in, you'll hear me for another hour. If not, take care, good night, and God bless you, America. Hasta la próxima. I'm Rich Valdez. We'll be right back.
Live from the city that never sleeps. 17 miles from Madison Square Garden, New York City. It's America at Night with Rich Valdez, America's favorite late-night talk program, featuring interesting guests from around the world and calls from across America. And now, here is your host, Rich Valdez.
Hi there, good evening, and what's up, America? I am Rich Valdez, Valdez with an S, at Rich Valdez on all of the social media. Welcome to the Thursday night edition of our program. We're live, we're national, it's 7 minutes past the top of the hour. Happy to be here, it's a real blessing, and our phone number is 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ. And I'm looking forward to speaking with you guys on open phones across America. We'll be doing that in just about 20 minutes or so. But first, I want to get into a few things, right? President Trump announcing on his Middle East tour that Iran is looking to make a deal. That's right. They're looking to dump their nukes and try and make a deal on these crippling sanctions. We've got a report from Garrett Hakey. Listen to this.
Tonight, President Trump striking an optimistic note on nuclear negotiations with Iran.
You probably read today the story about Iran has sort of agreed to the terms. They're not going to make, I call it in a friendly way, nuclear dust. We're not going to be making any nuclear dust in Iran, and want them to end up being a great country, frankly, but they can't have a nuclear weapon.
While delivering this warning.
There's two steps. There's a very, very nice step, and there's a violent step. I don't want to do the second step. Some people do. Many people do. I don't want to do that step.
It comes as the president received another extravagant welcome on the final stop of his Mideast trip in the United Arab Emirates, touring the iconic Grand Mosque.
This is an incredible culture.
And touting new Emirati investment pledges in the U.S.
That all means jobs, because to me the most important jobs, I want jobs.
Earlier in Qatar, President Trump addressing a rally-like gathering of U.S. troops on the massive American air base there.
You are, without a doubt, the greatest fighting force in the history of the world. That's the way it is.
The president also conceding there'd likely be little progress in Ukraine ceasefire talks until he and Russian President Putin can meet in person.
I don't believe anything's going to happen, whether you like it or not, until he and I get together.
And today in Turkey, President Putin skipped peace talks that he had called for. The Kremlin says there is no timetable for a Trump meeting. All of it comes just 2 weeks after President Trump said he believed Putin was ready for peace.
So that's the latest on that. But we continue because in addition to that, we've got the cartels. The cartels are now being impacted in a pretty major way with 17 of their top people turning themselves in. We're going to get to that a little bit in the next segment. But I also wanted to give you a little bit of an update on this stuff because this was very, very, very interesting. Let me see. This is the 23, 22. I wanted to do, I guess we could do number, what did I say I wanted to do here? Count. Number 20. Yep, that's the one. Listen to this one. CBS.
Two leaders of Mexico's Sinaloa cartel were arrested by federal authorities on Thursday, and one of the men charged is the son of the notorious drug kingpin Joaquin El Chapo Guzman. The Justice Department has confirmed that it has detained the leader of the cartel, Ismael El Mayo Zambada, and Joaquin Guzman. Both men were arrested in El Paso, Texas, without incident. Zambada pleaded not guilty to all charges in federal court earlier. So we mentioned Guzman's father is El Chapo, who ran the cartel until he was captured in 2016. He's serving a life sentence for charges including drug trafficking and money laundering. Let's bring in CBS News national correspondent Manuel Bojorquez, who's been following this case for us. So first, who are these men and what were the circumstances surrounding their arrests?
Well, these are two high-profile targets for the United States, and we are learning that the way that they were arrested was actually a trick. We're learning that Ismael Zambada thought he was going to see properties in northern Mexico, but instead was flown to a small airport outside of El Paso, where he was taken into custody by federal agents. And as you mentioned, also taken into custody yesterday, the son of El Chapo Guzman, Joaquin Guzman. These men were said to have been running one of the most largest and powerful violent criminal organizations in Mexico, responsible for importing, trafficking drugs into the United States and Europe. Specifically, they're charged with bringing fentanyl into the United States, which, as you know, has created a crisis that has killed tens of thousands of Americans.
So that is the latest on that. And I got to tell you, very interesting times, right? The last time I heard of a big cartel leader being arrested was, I don't know, was that January? Yeah, it was like the day of Trump's inauguration or something like that, I believe. He didn't quite take the oath of office yet, and they'd already locked up El Chapo. So anyway, this is one of those things we're going to get into in the next segment. Of course, we're going to get to your calls right after that. 833-482-5337 is the phone number for that. Looking forward to speaking with you guys. And I wanted to spend a couple of minutes talking about this James Comey stuff, because this is something we saw Gretchen Whitmer do, and we saw others also do this same thing, which is, you know, these coded messages. Now, you guys know I tend to be very, very staunch on the free speech stuff. And I let people talk all sorts of crap about me. I don't care, right? Say what you got to say. We ought not be calling for the death of anybody. But this doesn't typically go against the community guidelines, right, on the social media apps. If people say, you know, oh, your mother should have aborted you, you know, you'd be better off dead. Things like that are not necessarily death threats. Now, putting out these coded and cryptic messages like 8647, or like Gretchen Whitmer did 8645 when Trump was in office during the first term, of course they're uncouth and very, they're disgusting. But does it rise to a threat? Right? Because all over Twitter, people are talking about these. James Comey should be in jail. I'm thinking James Comey's a former federal law enforcer and attorney, and this guy knows exactly how to walk up to the line without crossing it. This is what deep staters do for a living. So I always feel like, man, we're not winning when we're calling for everybody and their mother to be locked up. And it's not because I don't believe in accountability. It's because I believe that the punishment is worse than the crime. I believe that James Comey wants El Trompito dead. This is a guy that took a bullet in the ear. And I'm not saying James Comey had something to do with it. I'm just saying there's a lot of people in the deep state and on the left and elsewhere that don't like El Trompito. I get that. My point is, you've got to take it in stride and just keep it moving. That's it. I mean, what else can you do? We could all sit here and I'll double down with the rest of them. Sure, nobody should be doing this. But at the same time, what are we going to do? People have a right to say these things. They have a right to call for these things. The same way they have a right to wear an FJB hat, right? Or Let's Go Brandon was the funny thing back in the day, right? So anyway, I wanted to get into that because, again, while I think it's uncouth, and I think it's the reason they do this is because they don't have anything else to do. I mean, just imagine being a Democrat today, right? When you want to talk smack about Trump, all you can do is make fun of what? Oh, now he's in the Middle East trying to make peace. Pfft, moron. Really, what are you going to say? Oh, man, he's got 2 months of low inflation. Oh, what about the egg prices, though? All my friends are losing their jobs, but yet the markets are doing good. And, I mean, you're going to sound like you've just got sour grapes, like you're upset that your guy didn't win. But you're not going to make an effective case that Trump isn't doing a good job. Trump's doing an incredible job, a phenomenal job. 115 days today. Come on. Absolutely. Absolutely. This is the best I've seen. So for all the critics, come on. If calling for his death, I mean, this is what Iran does. I don't think Iran should be doing it either. But that's what our critics are doing now. They're becoming like Iran. Death to America, death to Israel, death to Trump. Come on. The Democrats are better than that. At least that's my thought. Anyway, I hope that they're better than that. Anyway, I want to get into this border stuff, and I want to do it with retired border chief of law enforcement, Randy Clark. And we're going to do that straight ahead.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
Well, thank you, Rich, and thank you for everything. I know you very well, and I listen, but I have a lot of people that listen, and they love your show, and I appreciate it very much.
America at Night with Rich Valdez.
Now it's not a speculation for people that were wondering if American authorities were working with Mexican authorities to take down the cartels inside of Mexico and to dismantle laboratories. This post was just done by the U.S. Immigration and Customs Agency. They say 3 large-scale synthetic drug production labs in Sinaloa were dismantled with narcotics and chemical precursors seized in an operation led by ICE Homeland Security Investigations Vetted Unit with the government of Mexico, the Fiscal General of the Republic, the Agency of Investigation for Criminals, and supported by Mexican Marines. Also, ICE HSI has been working closely with the Fiscal General of the Republic and the Marines to identify drug precursors shipments from China and take out drug production labs operated by cartels in Mexico. The collaboration between ICE and the government of Mexico helps to stop the narcotic productions and the source of preventing deadly drugs to arriving and to being smuggled into the United States of America. So for people that they were wondering if American operations were inside of the country of Mexico, dismantling laboratories and fighting the cartels, guess what? You were right. The American authorities are supporting the Mexican government and dismantling laboratories inside of one of the most dangerous places in the States where the cartel war is at. We visited that place a couple of months ago where the Chapos and the Mayos are fighting in Sinaloa.
That's Oscar Ramirez, a correspondent with Real America's Voice TV. And this report that ICE agents and Homeland Security investigations agents are fighting the cartel, working alongside Mexican authorities, likely would not have been possible without the designation of the Sinaloa cartel becoming a foreign terrorist organization and using, our federal law enforcement and the Department of Defense to do what we do. And I want to get some reaction to that and the big news of the day. Of course, earlier I played a clip of the United States Attorney, Adam Gordon, from the Southern District of California, saying that the hunters have now become the hunted, announcing that 17 members of the family of drug lord Joaquin El Chapo Guzman were taken into custody since May 9th. So let's get some reaction to this from former Chief Randy Clark. He oversaw 9 Border Patrol offices in Texas, and he's the border correspondent for Breitbart News. Chief Clark, welcome back, sir.
How are you doing, Rich? It's good to be with you again.
Yeah, likewise. It's always a pleasure to speak with you. So I think a lot of people, I want to take this piece by piece. Let's take our time. But we've got the Americans working inside Mexico. This was the stuff of conspiracy theory just a couple of years ago. Now it's the real deal. What say you?
So you always pick, great topics, and there's always so many little facets to them. And this is another one that you've done because, what you're talking about right now, the open outdoor busting of these large-scale synthetic drug production labs in Sinaloa, they're incredibly important, right? But those are the things that we are doing out in the open. You're going to find out about them when they happen, and it's great work, right? Because we know, what happens at these drug labs and how they impact life and society for us. What we're not seeing is what happens in the background, and with the 17 family members of Chapo Guzman that just came in, we're not going to know exactly what we're getting from that because that's going to be classified information. A lot of this stuff is going to be classified, so we'll never be able to talk about it. But you know as well as I do, this administration is not going to let these folks in out of urgent humanitarian need. It's significant public benefit. That's the reason we have parole. There is some deal that is going on, and even the Mexican government is unhappy about it. I think you're going to see a hammer falling that is way bigger than these 3 synthetic drug labs that we're doing out in the open. This is what Mexico wants to help us with, right? This is like, I'm going to give you the cookie. What's happening in the background with El Chapo's wife coming in, his daughter coming in, son-in-law, and 13 others, that hammer could impact a lot of politicians in Mexico, high-ranking military. There's something behind the scenes, and I don't blame the government for not telling us, but the hammer's going to drop, and we'll see it. We're already seeing visas get denied to folks in Mexico. This is a very big deal, what we have going on with Sinaloa cartel right now.
Yeah, and I'm not saying you said it, but I believe that there is a very tangled web between the cartel, the government, the politicians, the military in Mexico. And I think if you see the cartel, I'm going to call it playing ball, turning themselves in, I think this hammer you talk about is going to fall on people other than the cartel who might even be higher up than them.
It's, if I was inclined to be a criminal associated with these folks right now, with this administration and the level of talent in all of these offices that are working together, I'd be very scared right now, right? Because we can see that it's not only affecting these folks that are the hardened criminals, it's affecting white-collar criminals in the United States, like the man in Utah, the wealthy man in Utah that was just arrested for smuggling that oil into the United States on behalf of the cartel. So there's banking issues that are going on. It could be politicians being impacted. I think there's a lot of people nervous. And we saw Chuck Schumer come out and say, oh, look at what Trump is doing. He's not, giving refugee status to these people and honoring these paroles, but he's willing to let these narcotics folks come in. Well, of course he is. That's what parole is for. They're going to testify. They're going to give us information. And this administration has said we're going to attack these cartels. We're tired of fentanyl being the number one cause of death for adults, males 18 to 45 years old. I mean, something has to be done, whether it's Mexico or us, because look at their murder rate. I mean, they're totally not concerned with their own people. So when they complain about Trump letting these folks in, there's a reason. They're very scared as well.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense to me. It makes a lot of sense to me. When I heard the interview that CNN did with someone from the Sinaloa cartel wearing a mask, wearing sunglasses, and modulating his voice, and they said this woman is trying to get him to a gotcha to say, she's like, Trump has made you a foreign terrorist. What do you say about that? And his response, he says, I respect what Trump did. It was so telling that, there's honor amongst thieves here, right? And it's going to get a lot worse. I agree with you, Randy Clark. Folks, we're coming right back with former Border Chief Randy Clark and me, Rich Valdez. Don't go anywhere.
The best guests, the best opinions. This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
How big of a deal is this when it comes to cutting off these cartels and their ability to traffic drugs into the U.S.?
Well, it is a big deal to have these two men arrested, but the effect really becomes debatable. Zambada has already said in the past that in the event of his capture or death, that he has a plan to keep the cartel in operation. And you remember the capture of El Chapo didn't necessarily end the cartel's operations. So it's definitely a blow. But the other thing at play here is as long as there is a market for these drugs in the United States, Europe, and other places, someone will be looking to fill the void and still continue to profit by bringing them into those countries.
That's CBS News correspondent Manuel Bojorquez. And that was the money shot there, right? He said, as long as there is a market for these drugs, someone is going to fill that void. Well, that's exactly what they were talking about when CNN interviewed a Sinaloa cartel lieutenant and tried to get him to say something negative about Trump. It turned out to be quite complimentary. Listen to this.
According to the Trump administration, you are a terrorist. I mean, the cartels have been labeled a foreign terrorist organization. What do you make of that?
Está fea la situación, ¿verdad? Está fea la situación, pero pues de todos modos tenemos que comer.
What's your message to Donald Trump if he's watching this?
Mis respetos, él tiene que según él buscar lo mejor para los suyos.
So he says the situation is ugly. Everybody's got to eat. She says, what's your message to Donald Trump? And he says, I respect him. And then he says this, listen.
Pero el detalle que ya están los consumidores. ¿No? Si no hubiera consumidores, pues...
He said, that's where the consumers are. If there weren't consumers, we wouldn't be doing this. And again, that's really the crux of it, right? We're going to stop the flow of it into the country. And I guess cross our fingers and hope that people stop using drugs. I don't know. I think that just creates a new black market. But you've got to control it one way or another. And I think you've got to go attack it from both sides. Let's bring this conversation back to somebody who knows exactly what's going on. He was the division chief for law enforcement operations, directing 9 Border Patrol stations in the Del Rio sector in Texas. He is the Breitbart News border correspondent, the main reporter there. Spent 32 years with the United States Border Patrol. Chief Randy Clark, welcome back, sir.
Thank you, Rich.
You bet. And
it's very interesting the way they frame things. You know, we look at these cartels like they're a bunch of dummies, and they're very organized. The Sinaloa cartel in particular. Yeah, they've got deep ties to China. They're money laundering with China. They're doing all kinds of things that have an adverse effect on our national security. And to use the crutch of saying, well, we're the consumers. Well, you're marketing a drug that is addictive in nature, right? Just like cigarettes are. If we do that in elementary schools, we can't blame the kids. We know what we're marketing. So we know they have the advantage of that. They're pushing these narcotics in. In the case of fentanyl, it's not even an addictive substance. It's a poison. It's killing people by the hundreds of thousands. So you look at what they're doing, it's very organized. They have a press department also. When you see this guy with a mask coming out, he knows exactly what to say, right? Because they've already got the ire of this president. They don't want to make him angrier than he already is. It's not wise. What's a shame is that we're attacking this president because he wants to attack these folks who are killing us. That's the ironic thing, is that he's trying to do, clearly what's in the best interest of the United States. But I think the hammer's going to have to drop on Mexico. They are losing the battle of murders over there. They are losing, not only politicians running for office, they're losing innocent people in the crossfire. Their murder rate is 24 per 100,000, with a third of our population compared to us here with about 6 for 100,000. They can't sustain this longer, I would hope, without their people seeking a solution.
Chief Randy Clark, it seems to me, and again, I don't know what I'm talking about, you do, but with respect to this, it seems to me like the cartel is in the business of making money. They're not going to stop making money, or at least they don't want to stop making money. So I feel like they've reached a point where they say, look, we're dealing with a guy that's unreasonable, Trump. He's not going to do business with us. We used to have a great president named Joe Biden. He did everything we wanted him to do. We don't have that anymore. So what do? Maybe we need to switch our product or focus more on one end of our business than the other. Fentanyl is going to have to come to a screeching halt. But maybe we can, do a little bit more in the human trafficking area. Not so much with the kids. It makes us too hot. Maybe we could traffic something else. Maybe they need laborers for factories. Let's work with China. Maybe China wants some investment and put some factories in the U.S. to avoid tariffs. Whatever the case is, do you think what I'm saying is how they're having this conversation, or are they going a different route?
I think they're confused. I think they're analyzing things, and we know there's, some battle going on, especially with the Sinaloa cartel, between, the offspring of El Mayo Zambada, the one that Joaquin turned in, and the sons of Chapo, the Chapitos. And it seems like maybe with this latest turn-in of the 17 family members, maybe the Maitos are getting the better of the other branch. All it does is it creates confusion. But the bottom line is they're not going to engage in anything that is not going to be criminal and is going to be tolerated if it involves the United States. Our president has already said, I'm not tolerating money laundering. I'm not tolerating smuggling, Mexican petroleum products into the United States. It doesn't look like this president is willing to tolerate any illegal activity, cross-border activity involving cartels or gangs like Tren de Aragua and Mara Salvatrucha. So I think they're in a bad spot. Whatever they choose better not involve the United States. And that's a great thing, because guess what? I didn't see that firm line drawn in the sand in my entire 32 years where somebody said, no more, and I don't care what it takes. So I think, Mexico can be a little bit irritated with the 17 being turned in without getting notified in advance. But there was good reason for that, and this administration knows it. And they may be more worried than angry because they don't know what these 17 people have in their pockets, who they're going to testify against.
What they're doing.
Exactly. Exactly.
Now, let me ask you this, Randy Clark. What about legal business? That I'm sure the cartels are diversified and have a lot of legal American businesses that they're tied to. Do you think they try to stay afloat with that side of it, or is that all tied to their money laundering operations, and that'll be wiped out eventually as well?
President Trump does a lot of things he promises during a campaign, and we see other people say, well, we're going to do this, and it never materializes. And one of the important things is this designation of them as a foreign terrorist organization. Everybody looked at, well, you know what, it's going to be the financial, and we're seeing the criminal prosecutions. We've already begun the criminal prosecutions, which can carry up to 20 years and life in the case of a death. Well, that's pretty likely if you have, up to 100,000 people dying of fentanyl poisoning every year. And if you're moving that, even in Chicago, and you're getting that from a cartel, that's what you're amenable to. But for these white-collar bankers, the fines under these statutes that deal with providing material support to a foreign terrorist organization, they are pretty harsh as well. So, I think everybody who's engaging in any of this traffic has a lot to be worried about.
Yeah, I think you're right. And I also got to say, I think this is phase one, right? Like you're saying, the hammer's going to drop. Because in reality, I remember lots and lots of criticism when President Obama was using the Department of Justice to prosecute members of al-Qaeda. And people were saying, hold on a second, when Bush was in office, we didn't use the DOJ, we used the military, and they went straight to Guantanamo because they're terrorists, and that's how we do this. And he was saying, well, they deserve due process. I don't remember that whole thing, but it was similar to what we're doing now. And Trump is starting with using the DOJ to prosecute, and I get that. But I think ultimately there's still that ace in the hole, his ability to say, you guys are terrorists. You guys are like al-Qaeda. You guys are like ISIS, and you guys can end up in Guantanamo Bay. So you need to play ball.
Well, I think if he doesn't see the results that he's looking for, they certainly have alternative methods of thinking, and they're a break from the past. So I wouldn't rule that out. I look at maybe military action in Mexico. Look at the cartels. There's no argument they are a de facto government in Mexico because they are killing off the politicians. They are now, with the judicial reform, you have lawyers in Mexico that have long defended cartel members that are getting into the judiciary there, and they're going to control soon who goes to jail potentially and who gets set free. So I can see that military action getting closer and closer to reality.
Yeah. Well, I mean, as you're saying that, I'm thinking we've got judges in America who are looking out for these criminals, right? Like Judge Cano over in New Mexico, looking out the Tren de Aragua. So it's not far-fetched to think if we've got them over here, they've definitely got a lot more of them over there.
Absolutely.
Randy Clark, let everybody know how they can keep up to speed with the columns that you're writing and all of the work that you're doing.
They can find me at Breitbart.com under our Cartel Chronicles World page. They can find me on the main page. They can find me on X at Randy Clark BBTX.
Outstanding. Folks, give him a follow. He is a pro. He's the real deal. He's a gentleman, a patriot, and a scholar. Retired division chief for law enforcement operations, United States Border Patrol, and Breitbart News Texas border reporter, Chief Randy Clark. Thank you, sir. God bless you.
Have a wonderful evening, Rich.
You too. Talk to you soon. Thank you so much. And amigos, your thoughts, calls, and reactions when we come back. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S. Call now, 833-4VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
Let me be direct. To the leaders of the Sinaloa cartel, you are no longer the hunters. You are the hunted. You will be betrayed by your friends. You will be hounded by your enemies. And you will ultimately find yourself and your fates here in a courtroom in the Southern District of California. An indictment which our office unsealed today is the first in the nation to charge multiple alleged leaders of the Sinaloa cartel with narco-terrorism and material support of terrorism charges in connection with trafficking massive amounts of fentanyl, cocaine, methamphetamine, and heroin. The indictment was made possible by President Trump's Executive Order 14157, which designated the Sinaloa cartel as a foreign terrorist organization, and the Secretary of State's subsequent designation of the same on February 20th, 2025.
Again, that is the U.S. Attorney for the Southern District of California. His name, Adam Gordon, and he's talking about the family of El Chapo Guzman, and 17 of them have crossed the border into the United States, into San Diego, to turn themselves into U.S. authorities, and have now been charged by the Department of Justice. Now, there's Mexican officials that were really upset about this, saying that they crossed here as part of a deal between the son and the former head of the Sinaloa cartel and the Trump administration. The Mexican Security Secretary, Omar Garcia Harfuch, he confirmed in a report by independent journalist Luis Chaparro that family members of Ovidio Guzman Lopez had entered the United States. Lopez, the son of imprisoned Sinaloa cartel boss Joaquin El Chapo Guzman, was extradited to the U.S. Back in, I think it was 2016, if I'm not mistaken. And among those family members, his former wife, Griselda, and others. So he did a radio interview, and the security chief of Mexico, and he said it was clear to Mexican authorities the deal was made during negotiations between Guzman and the U.S. government. He said it's evident that his family is going to the U.S. because of a negotiation or an offer that the Department of Justice is giving him. None of the family was being pursued by Mexican authorities. Now, what does that tell you? These people are all in on the deal, providing material support, and yet they weren't wanted by the Mexican government. Anyway, video footage that was posted online by the Spanish language radio station Radio Formula shows Guzman's family carrying luggage as they waited to be processed at the Tijuana-San Diego border crossing, and they had only about $70,000 in cash with them. So that's what's going on there. And what the rest of this deal looks like, I don't know. But I want to get your reaction to all of this stuff. Let's go to David, San Francisco, California, streaming the show, KVTA. California in the building. Go right ahead, David.
Well, yeah, I'm glad you corrected yourself, because you opened the show claiming that they were under arrest, and that peacefully, maybe it was one of your sound clips of a local DA that was claiming that they were under arrest.
No, he's not a local DA. He's a United States attorney, and they're in federal custody.
Well, and that's the strange thing about it, because you just do El Chapo in a Google search and then look at news. You get 17 members of cartel kingpin's family were escorted into California from Mexico. Why? That's the LA Times. USA Today, family members of drug lord El Chapo enter U.S. officials say. Fox News, El Chapo's family members cross U.S. border in apparent deal with Trump administration. New York Times, El Chapo family members cross the border in an apparent deal with the U.S. Goes on and on. There was a deal. Now, Trump was offering a $5 million gold card. Do you think that they all had gold cards?
Well, I'm not sure. This is very clear. You're trying to go in a different direction here, but it's very clear to me that while there's a deal, plea bargains happen all the time. So I don't know what type of sentence they're going to get, or what the terms of the deal are, or which cartels they turn on. It's clear to me that more is to come. So are they in federal custody? Will they become state's witnesses and, turn over other cartel members where they get preferential treatment by the government, or a lesser sentence? But you heard the charges. They're providing material support to terrorists. And this is what they've been charged with, the 17 of them. El Chapo's already in jail. So I don't know what the terms of the deal are, but they're clearly going to get the best part of the deal, because they took the deal. And when you say escorted, I mean, you can be escorted into a prison by a bunch of guards. How the escort happened, I think you're making it sound like they were, brought here by limo. So I think, yeah, they got a deal, and they're likely rolling on somebody and avoiding the full extent of the prosecution, which is going to tumble this down, because they were the cartel that was in charge. So this may create an opportunity for a smaller cartel to come in, but I don't know if you're trying to minimize the impact of this, but this is huge news, David. Anyway, we've got to leave it right there. Folks are coming right back with the rest of your calls and more. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, amigos, I see some calls are lining up. We're going to get to your calls momentarily right on the other side of the break. 833-482-5337, 833-4-Valdez. Plenty to talk about. Plus, there was a assassination attempt on El Trumpito, or at least one they were thinking of, from some Ukrainians. This is a report that I just saw a couple of weeks ago, and wanted to have a quick conversation about that. So we're going to get into that, as well as a bunch of other things. Again, James Comey saying at 86-47. I want to get your calls and thoughts on all of this stuff. Plus, Iran wants to make a deal. Keep it locked right here, folks. It's Rich Valdez coming right back.
Live from the city that never sleeps. 17 miles from Madison Square Garden, New York City. It's America at Night with Rich Valdez, America's favorite late-night talk program, featuring interesting guests from around the world and calls from across America. And now, here is your host, Rich Valdez.
Hi there, good evening, and what's up, America? I am Rich Valdez, Valdez with an S, at Rich Valdez on all of the social media. Welcome to the Thursday night edition of the program. Yet another hour of our program. Happy to be with you. Honestly, I am. It's a real blessing. It's 7 minutes past the hour, and this is our final hour together. Unless you're in some parts of the country, then you might get another hour. But I want to get into a few things tonight. Now, we've talked about the Sinaloa cartel and how they've made a deal, right? And I wonder what that deal looked like. Like, well, what's the deal? Is that Trump playing hardball, going to them saying, hey, look, I can blow up your facilities or I could blow up your homes because you guys are now like al-Baghdadi. You guys are now terrorists. Or whoever takes the deal first, you know? I can go to the Jalisco cartel. I can go to the Sinaloa cartel. Whichever one of you wants to play ball and roll on the other, you know, I'm pretty sure it went something like that. And they said, all right, you know what? We've made plenty of money. Let us keep some of that money. We've got a bunch of businesses. We've been laundering money. We can live like normal people and still be rich in America. And we don't want to go to jail. I don't know. I don't know what this looks like, you know. Maybe I watched too many movies. But that's what's going on there. And they've been charged with providing material support to terrorists. Doesn't sound like a good charge. Hopefully, you know, this makes a positive impact. Just like the impact that Trump is making in the Middle East. Securing something like $5 trillion in investment in our country. At least commitments for that kind of money. Fantastic. Now, let's see. There's more. Russia and Ukraine peace talks have been downgraded with neither Putin nor Zelensky willing to attend. So President Trump says, I don't think much of it's going to get done unless I show up myself. And he said that earlier today from Qatar. I think we have an audio clip of that. Count Delacula, do we have it? We don't have that one. Okay. Well, that's basically what he said. And this is, I think, important because I agree. Without Trump saying, hey, listen, you guys have to sit down and you have to talk. We have to hash this out. I don't think you get to the deal. And, you know, I was at breakfast earlier today with my brother. Not my conspiracy brother, my crypto brother. And he tells me that he says, well, come on, what do you expect? He says, President Trump, you know, before he did all that, this guy was negotiating, you know, ceasefire agreements between the plumbers and the electricians, you know, in his different buildings. And he said, man, if anybody knows how to handle all those guys and get them all together and get to a win, it's Trump. And I said, you know what, you're right. This is part of why I love the guy. I think he's terrific because he has so much practical ability that I feel it just lends itself so well to this stuff. When he constantly talks about, and we get along and I have a lot of respect for him. He's tough. He's very tough, right? He knows how to compliment people the right way. Sometimes the people that are tough don't want to hear that they're smart. They want to hear that they're tough. They want others to know that they're tough. It helps their tough image, right? If you, to Putin, right? You could tell Putin he's a very handsome guy, very nice guy. Wouldn't work. Putin doesn't care if you think he's handsome. With Putin, you got to tell him he's tough. You got to tell him he's strong. And then you got to tell him he's very sharp. And if it's a really contentious situation, you got to pull back and say, have a lot of respect for him. Right? Trump knows exactly what he's saying and how he's doing it. He's very good at this stuff. He's good at being very accommodating. He's good at being complimentary. He's good at helping people to get to where they need to be. My pastor at church, who I interviewed, you've heard him on his program, Pastor Anthony Fleming, He often says you got to find the gold in people. I think that's exactly what Trump does. I think, he is that guy. He's there to schmooze and let's make a deal. I mean, he's literally the art of the deal. That's him. And it's always based in positivity. It's never based in conflict. It's always based on let's make another deal tomorrow, next week, next year, next time I see you. Let's have a good time. Let's be happy. Let's be nice. Let's keep it on the up and up. This is what I appreciate. I really do. Because this is how I feel too. Right? This is what Reagan did. Reagan did the same thing, and they lauded him as the great communicator. Him and his relationship with Tip O'Neill, it was celebrated. Now, listen, I understand that there's been an over-celebration of bipartisanship. I get that. I agree that there might have been. And we put so much emphasis on bipartisanship, we've totally forgot what it's like to be a partisan and to put America first. I get that. We want to be patriots. We need to keep America first. But at the same time, not being bipartisan all the time doesn't mean that you're out to get the other guy all the time. It just means you're out for yourself to promote your interest. If you're a congressman, your interest is the 750,000 some odd people that you represent in your district. You also have a commitment to the party that you run with and your conference. The Democrat conference, the Republican conference. All of those things matter. You're literally a politician. You could pay lip service and say, look, my party doesn't matter. It's what matters here is the people. All right, say what you want. But you're not getting anything done without your party, right? That's just how it goes. You need votes for something, you got to get it done. You got to do a little horse trading. So there's a reality to the way currency works in Washington. You can't bribe people with cash all the time. You got to bribe them with, hey, look, I'll vote on your bill if you vote on mine. Help me get this thing out of committee. I mean, everything is a deal. Which, henceforth, I think this is why Trump is good at what he does. So I said all that to say, and I said this last night, but I want to reiterate it. I will never become someone that is so angry and frustrated and fed up and sick and tired that I'm going to get on the air and just yell and beat people up. And tell you why I hate this one, why I hate that one, why we hate the Democrats, why they should. Because then I become James Comey, saying that we need to 86 the Dems, the way he says we got to 86-47. I don't think we should operate in hate. Make love, not war, right? That's the mantra. Anyway, that was a little bit of a tangent from me, but I wanted to put that out there. And it's that deal-making ability that I think is going to get Russia and Ukraine to the table to truly have some sort of agreement. I'm not going to say a lasting agreement because I think that the conflict there is deep and there might be more down the road, but not immediately down the road. Let's see what else we got here. We've got the Supreme Court weighing in, or at least entertaining and listening to oral arguments on birthright citizenship. We'll talk about that. And we did talk about that. I'll get back to that in your calls in a little bit. Let me see what else we have. Judge Jeanine Pirro has been sworn in as the United States Attorney for Washington, D.C. because of the holdup they placed on a guy named Ed Martin. Now, this is brilliant. I think after the time comes where Judge United States Attorney Jeanine Pirro, when she decides, I don't want to be this anymore. I want to, I'm done. Here's my 1 year or 2 years or 4 years of service, whatever it is. If it happens sooner than that, you've got two rock stars over at FBI that both went through the Senate confirmation process. So it makes all the sense in the world to me for Dan Bongino to become FBI director and for Kash Patel to go somewhere else and kick butt and take names. Just imagine that, right? Him saying, look, I'm handing the baton, I'm passing the torch to Danny B., and I'm going to go over and relieve Judge Jeanine. And I'm not saying she can't or she needs to be relieved. He can go anywhere, right? But just imagine, right? You've got people that are already Senate confirmed. So you can move these people around. And they're loyal to the movement. They're loyal to America. They're loyal to this administration. And I think that's key. and you can put these people that know what needs to be done and know who can do it. They're the people you need. And I think that's great. And I'm using Cash as an example, but you've got a lot of people like that. So stay tuned, folks. I think there's a lot more movement ahead, and that's very positive for the agenda moving forward. Anyway, I want to get into a few different things with you. Not that long ago, there was a report about an assassination attempt on Donaldus Magnus El Trompito, the 45th and 47th president of these United States. And it turned out these FBI affidavits that were recently unsealed revealed that a 17-year-old from Wisconsin, Nikita Kasap, who murdered his own parents, stole $14,000 in cash and plotted to assassinate President Trump using a militarized drone. So we're going to hear a little bit more about that straight ahead. You may have heard about that in the news, but something tells me you probably didn't hear enough about it because that's a crazy freaking story. And I want to hear a little bit more about that when we return. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
Rich Valdez, who again will do a fine job, and I know you'll enjoy listening to it.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
In Waukesha, the teen accused of killing his parents as part of a plot to assassinate President Trump has pled not guilty. 17-year-old Nikita Kasap faces 9 felony charges, including murder and hiding a corpse. He's accused of killing his mother and stepfather on February 11th and then living with the bodies for nearly 2 weeks. The teen then went on the run and was later arrested in Kansas. Federal authorities say it was part of a plot to assassinate President Trump and overthrow the government.
So this is the latest update on that is that this person pled not guilty just a few days ago. And I want to get to the bottom of it because apparently he was coordinating an escape of all places, Ukraine. I wonder what they had to do with this. Well, let's bring in our guest, Jason Sullivan. He's a writer, and he's also a forensic investigator for an attorney out of Florida. Jason, welcome to the program, sir.
Hello, Rich. A pleasure to be here with you and your audience at America at Night.
Thank you. Let's dig into this because I find this to be a very interesting story that is just crazy. And I guess at first look, it's kind of like, all right, this poor guy is nuts. He killed his parents. He's doing all sorts of crazy stuff. But it seems like there's more to it because why would he go to Ukraine? Was it for family, or do you think there's more to that picture?
Rich, you asked some great questions here. There are obviously, well, not obviously for your audience perhaps yet, but it will be, obviously some reoccurring themes that continue to keep taking place here regarding assassination attempts and roads leading to somehow connections to Ukraine. In this particular case, we have Nikita Kasap, a very young, impressionable young man, very unstable, of course. Obviously, he killed his parents. He killed his own dear mother and his stepfather. He stole $14,000 from them in an attempt that he was going to actually purchase a weaponized, militarized drone. Now, Rich, drones are used every single day in warfare, especially in the Ukrainian-Russian war. There are kamikaze-style drones that literally chase their subjects and fly directly into them and detonate. You know what happens next. Mm-hmm. There are larger drones with larger payloads, which do the same thing, and they can take out entire tanks. And there have been vehicle-sized drones that actually fly right into the sides of high-rise buildings and take out entire floors. Drones are a real significant threat, and it's legitimate. So here's a case where a young man that's very impressionable, very unstable, is caught and whipped up into certain particular chat groups over encrypted networks, encrypted communication networks, such as Telegram.
Right.
And there are umpteen numbers of hundreds of thousands of different types of chat groups like these that can be absolute breeding grounds for terrorist-type organization recruitment. As we know in Minnesota, actually, Minnesota became the #1 recruitment camp for ISIS here stateside in the United States. And that is still true to this day. So there are individuals and handlers, so to speak, that may end up actually setting up chat groups as information operations, and then they monitor them and look for individuals that could be very unstable and perhaps ready to quote-unquote tip. Individuals that are angry, they're expressing their anger, they're expressing their frustration, they're expressing, that they are, quote-unquote, drinking the Kool-Aid in regards to some of these chat groups, and then they realize that these are individuals that they can start to tip. In this particular case with Nikita Kasap, 17-year-old, not only did he murder his parents and steal $14,000 and plan to purchase a weaponized militarized drone, he was communicating with through Telegram that we have found through this 26-page affidavit that was only recently released by the FBI. This is publicly available, so we're not going to be doxing anybody here. This is information that is available to the general public if you know how to search for it. My understanding is it's currently still not even indexed in PACER system, which is kind of interesting. However, we were able to find it. 26 pages. We analyzed it very thoroughly. And lo and behold, within the 26-page affidavit, we see that there is a cell phone number listed in it. The cell phone number is connected to an individual that Nikita Kasap is communicating with overseas. And in that cell phone number, of course, there is abilities to reverse it and track where its origins. So the phone number that he was communicating with, one of the individuals, he was communicating with at least 2 individuals located in Ukraine, or at least affiliated with Ukrainian phone numbers. In this particular case, one is country code 380. That is the country code for Ukraine. And then the next 2 numbers, Rich, is 50, which is an indication that this is a cell phone that is connected on the Vodafone cellular network, which, if I'm not mistaken, is one of the largest, if not the largest, cellular network in all of Ukraine. So that means that Nikita Kasap is communicating here, according to this 26-page affidavit, with handlers. And one of these handlers, at least 2 of them actually, are in Ukraine. And when I say handlers, I'm talking about these individuals giving him specific instruction. These handlers were fully aware of what Nikita Kasap's plans were. He was expressing his intent and desire to assassinate our president and to overthrow the government. Talk about delusional. However, again, with a drone, once you hear a drone coming, it could be too late. Okay? Again, they're used every single day in warfare. But in this particular case, he's talking with individuals that are telling him, giving him specific instruction on how to actually get rid of the bodies.
Wow. Jason Sullivan, we're up against the clock here, but I want to make sure people who want to follow the rest of your work and learn more about it, they get a chance to do that. Where do they go to hear the rest of the story?
How much time do we have, Rich?
About 40 seconds.
40 seconds, okay. Please go to the Gateway Pundit. Check in on my name, Jason Sullivan. You'll be able to find our various articles, and I'll leave your audience with this. This is not the only connection back to Ukraine. The second assassination attempt, Ryan Wesley Roth, was located or seen in Ukraine recruiting people to fight in the war against Russia.
Wow, that's right. I remember that. Well, Jason Sullivan, thank you for the update. I appreciate it. Amigos, we come back with more conversation straight ahead. Don't go anywhere.
Valdez. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4Valdez. That's Valdez with an S.
And you probably read today the story about Iran has sort of agreed to the terms. They're not going to make, I call it in a friendly way, nuclear dust. We're not going to be making any nuclear dust in Iran. And we've been strong. I want them to succeed. I want them to end up being a great country, frankly, but they can't have a nuclear weapon. That's the only thing. It's very simple. It's not like I have to give you 30 pages worth of details. There's only one sentence: they can't have a nuclear weapon. And I think we're getting close to maybe doing a deal without having to do this. There's two steps. There's a very, very nice step, and there's a violent step. The violence like people haven't seen before. And I hope we're not going to have to do this. I don't want to do the second step. Some people do. Many people do. I don't want to do that step. So we'll see what happens. But we're in very serious negotiations with Iran for long-term peace. And if we do that, it'll be fantastic.
That, of course, President Trump, El Trompito, Donaldus Magnus, the 45th and 47th president of these United States, saying that Iran now wants to make a deal. And we also heard from the folks in Iran, Ali Shatani, the military advisor to Iran's supreme leader, who said the same thing. He said, hey, look, we're willing to have a conversation. It's time we're willing to talk. And this is a good thing. Do I trust them? No. Do I think that they believe Trump is going to blow them up? Yeah. I think they think that Trump is going to strategically target their enrichment facilities, and they're not going to have them anymore. So if they want to keep them to fight another day, then they have to play ball with us. And I think that's what's going on. But that's not the only thing that's going on. You've also got Putin and the other guy, Volodymyr Zelensky. And they seem to be at odds with one another. And, all sorts of reports. They were meeting, now they're not meeting. And, they're sending their special envoys and whatnot. So I don't know. I don't know what's going on here. But I do know that Zelensky's sending the Ukrainian team to Istanbul for the Russia peace talks. And this is a step in the right direction. I don't know if these guys are showing up. I don't know if Trump is showing up. I think that was speculation all week that Trump might pop in, but I know he's not going to pop in if he's not even, if they're not there. So I don't know. Let's get your thoughts, calls, and reactions on what's going on. 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ. And, of course, open phones across America is a time-honored tradition here on this program. It dates back, right? We do it together, you and I. But it dates back to 1978, which is the year I was born, by the way, when Larry King started doing that. And that, of course, was continued for 3 decades by the late, great Jim Bohannon. And now you and me get to make radio history, baby, every single night. Let's go to Michael calling us from Pendleton, Oregon, over on the West Coast, listening on KUMA. Great station, by the way. Michael, go right ahead.
Rich, hey, great show as usual. Great to talk to you. I wanted to call in. I got home a little bit late from work, but I wanted to congratulate President Trump on a great trip to the Middle East. He's helping our country so much. And as a regular American, I see the difference. There's all kinds of great job opportunities popping up, and thanks to President Trump. And, I mean, they're good-paying jobs, and I want to thank him for that. But also I want to add, of course, with my girlfriend over in Ukraine, I was, disappointed Putin didn't show up for that meeting. I think Zelensky is coming around to President Trump's point of view more and more, and I'm really happy to see that. I want to see peace there, of course, as soon as possible, and for my girlfriend's safety too. But I have faith that President Trump can bring Putin to the table. I've heard other talk shows, they've had foreign affairs experts, Rich, and they said it's so important for an American president to have a good relationship with Russia, because it's dangerous if we don't. And I think that's great where President Trump is trying to normalize our relations with Russia, to have normal relations, because it's a dangerous world out there. President Trump has said that. And I think it's important to have a decent relationship with President Xi in China. And like I said, it's a dangerous world, and I think that's important to have those relationships.
Michael, I think you raise a good point. And this is one that I was talking about earlier, and I'll keep talking about it because ultimately I can't reconcile hating people for their politics, and I just can't. I can't reconcile it. I don't. I can dislike people and cut them off and not associate. I'm not saying I'm Mother Teresa, but I can't do it to everybody, right? It's got to be something that's really like, I really can't have you in my life type of thing. Otherwise, say what you want to say, do what you want to do. Listen, this is America. I believe that you're right. It's good to have a good relationship with everybody, right? Now, some people have the good fortune of getting along with, their neighbor to their left, their neighbor to their right, the neighbor, adjacent to their backyard. Everybody gets along. Some don't. Some might be at war or having a lawsuit or just, don't have a neighbor on either side. Whatever the case is, I think when Trump doubles down and constantly says that, we get along well, and that's a good thing. It's a good thing to get along. I love it when he says that because it's important. It's important, I think, that we do work on getting along. Listen, I have with an open hand, an olive branch extended, invited Congresswoman AOC, all out crazy, on this program so many times, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. This has been going on since 2018 when she didn't have an office yet in the district. And it's funny, 2018, that was a long time ago already. Monday, I think it was Monday, this Monday, maybe it was last Monday. But Monday, the New York Post had a whole article about her not being available, that she's never in the district. And that's coming from complaints from people in her district. That was the same complaint after she won. People were saying, you won months ago and you still don't have an office here. I bring all of that up to say, look, I disagree with a lot of what AOC stands for. But I don't dislike her, per se. I don't even know her. And that's really what I've learned in working in the media. You got to get to know people. That you might meet people that you really like and you get along with. And that's a good thing. I agree with Trump when he says that. It's a good thing. This is why I let people call in the show and I let them talk their smack. And people say I'm too patient and I'm too this, but you got to give people a chance. So I'm with you. I think it's good for Trump to get along with Putin. I think it's good for Trump to get along with anybody he can get along with. And if they're active enemies attacking our country, then clearly you can't get along. At that point, hopefully you are, a better shot than they are, and you're a better strategic mind than they are, and you're a better military power than they are, so that you can have your way. But I don't think we should opt for not getting along. So, yeah, very good point. Michael Pendleton, Oregon, KUMA. Thank you for the call, brother. And amigos, we come back. Your calls and more. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S. Valdez. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
And now what DHS is trying to say, again, they're using public intimidation because they know that they cannot come for us all. They know that they cannot come for us all. And recently what they said is that DHS is allegedly looking into arresting members of Congress who were showing up for their legal and constitutional obligation to conduct oversight. If anyone's breaking the law in this situation, it's not members of Congress, it's the Department of Homeland Security. It's people like Tom Homan and Secretary Kristi Noem. You lay a finger on someone, on Representative Bonnie Watson Coleman, on Representative, or any of the representatives that were there, you lay a finger on them, we are going to have a problem. Because the people who are breaking the law are the people who are not abiding by it.
That is AOC on Instagram on the 12th. So that was 48 hours ago. Maybe a little more than that. But yeah, it was nighttime. So yeah, I think it was about 2 days ago. And AOC, all out crazy herself, my least favorite congresswoman from the Bronx and Queens. She thinks that she is above the law. She thinks that all of Congress is above the law. She's trying to make it look like Kristi Noem and the Department of Homeland Security are coming to arrest every member of Congress for, quote unquote, doing their job when they didn't have an appointment, when they weren't announced, when they locked up the mayor of Newark for trying to do the same thing. Guess what? You can't just walk into a jail facility. And, you know, I meant to mention this the other day, but on this program, I've told you a bunch of times, I used to work for a Christian college called Pillar College, and I also volunteered with the Newark, New Jersey Police Department as a police chaplain. And I have visited the worst jail I've ever seen in my life. Not that I've seen many, but by the standards of many people who frequent jails, they've told me this is the absolute worst. They call it the Green Monster, Essex County Jail. It's had a horrible reputation my whole life. And it's right next to Delaney Hall where these people were breaking in. Our caller, Marshall, the other night, he very aptly pointed out that of all the places they could go, with the Green Monster literally right next door, how is it that Democrats, Bonnie Watson Coleman, Congresswoman LaMonica McIver, Congressman Robert Menendez Jr., how is it that all of them have never, ever pulled up to the Green Monster to defend the rights of American citizens who are incarcerated? And I'll tell you, poorly, very poorly incarcerated. That jail is run so badly that it is shameful to say that it's in the United States. I mean, I once saw a video of a fight that occurred there on a website in New Jersey. I think it was NJ.com. Horrible, horrible. I mean, this fight was so brutal. I believe the gentleman died as a result of the injuries. If not, he wasn't the same, that's for sure. I mean, they beat this man, another inmate, with a mop bucket. And after he was totally out cold and they had beat him with the broom, they beat him with the bucket, they beat him with their feet, they stomped on him. After they did all that, they managed to get a microwave oven. Now, this is not the microwave oven in your house, whatever the one in your house looks like. This is the one that they have in jail. It's kind of like the ones that they have at those fast food restaurants that are like big and silver, you know, like actually made from stainless steel, not the stainless steel look just in the front. And they took one of those and smashed his head in. Brutal fight. I mean, brutal. They jumped the guy. One guy versus like 6 or 8. Absolutely horrible. And the guards don't come until the mayhem is over. And again, this is not on the guards. I realize they had to get backup. They had to do whatever they do. They're outnumbered in an old facility where things don't work well, where there's more rats than there are inmates. I mean, this is a very bad situation. And yet, these guys want to pull up to Delaney Hall to defend the non-citizens. And again, everybody needs a defense, right? If that's how they're led, that's how they're led. I'm not here to say that non-citizens don't deserve. I've got friends. Listen, every day I go to the gym. I go to the gym with a friend of mine who was born in Dominican Republic. He's an immigrant. My other friend, I think he might have been born somewhere else too. I have a whole bunch of friends that were born in other places. I hang out with a bunch of immigrants. 2 of my close friends that I see, I don't know, twice a month. These guys were both born in Cuba. One came here through the Wet Foot, Dry Foot program on the back of a jet ski. You've heard me talk about him. Ruben the Cuban. And All I can tell you is I don't begrudge any immigrants. I don't. I really don't. Most of the ones I know have obtained their legal status. They're in the country legally. They've done what they had to do. Some of the people I've seen in my travels are not. And they're working on that situation. And there are still some. I just talked to somebody the other day. It wasn't somebody beknownst to me personally, but somebody that I do know personally was telling me about their mom. And that their mom married their dad early on in being in this country and became a citizen. And then they had him and his family, his siblings. But that the mom had a sister. And he's like, my mom's been married for 30 years to my dad, and her sister's been here just as long and never even applied to get a green card. And now all of a sudden she's worried she's going to get deported. And I said, well, what do you tell somebody like that? Other than they're likely just going to get deported because I don't see how you're going to be able to pull it off now. It's not a lack of compassion. It's just the reality of common sense. Anyway, we're going to get to your calls and more. I needed to hog up a little bit of time there just to get those thoughts out because I think it's important to say that. And by the way, I'd been to Delaney Hall. That was what I was trying to say with all this ADHD moment. And I went there years ago when before it was an ICE detention center. It was a halfway house. And I worked for a Christian college, and they were offering a program for people that, were just coming home and reintegrating back into society who, had some college credits that they'd gotten either in jail or prior to going to jail and wanted to complete a bachelor's degree through a special accelerated adult program we had where students would meet once a week and be able to graduate in about 18 months. And it was a great program. And I went there to, make a deal with the warden and the people there to see if, their people had interest. And it was not easy. I didn't just get to pull up and walk right in. Back then, you're talking between 2009 and 2011, you needed an appointment. You had to get buzzed in. I mean, that's just how things work. So for the Congress people to think that they're above the law, come on, you're bugging. That's crazy. Anyway, your calls and more coming up straight ahead.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, amigos, to the phones we go. We got calls from Idaho, from WVMT, Vermont area, north of Vermont, Montreal, actually. College Station, Texas as well, KTAW country. Let's check in with Joe. Go right ahead, Joe.
Hey, thank you for having my call. I was listening and I heard y'all talking about, some of the things that can be done on our side of the border in regards to demand for drugs.
Mm-hmm.
And I was thinking that it's just something that I believe you'd have to make the penalty so severe that people will stay away from it, and then maybe offer programs where, you say, hey, look, these things are going to go into effect. And if you're having issues with these substances, then please call this number or get some help because these laws are going to be pretty bad and, so on and so forth. And then I had one other question, and I know it's kind of off topic. And you can just, if you don't mind, just answering that question.
Sure, quickly though.
Here in Texas, here in Texas, the spread of Islam, and these cities that are trying to get started up, where it got all to do with that. Would y'all have a show for that?
Yeah, we actually did a show. Check out the website, richvaldez.com. I don't have the date, but we did something when that city council in Texas passed some sort of ordinance or whatever. But we'll do more on that because I think if you don't like that, you just need more of what you do believe in. Hasta la próxima. I'm Rich Valdez.